My speaker buddy seems to have gotten waylaid, so I'm going to go ahead and get started so as to use your time to the best benefit. I'm Ron Chapman. My company is Magnetic North. I'm delighted to be here, and I'd actually like to start by telling you the story of how what we're going to do today came into being. 2002, I'm in a city that shall be unnamed for purposes of the client. I've been recruited to do both a little bit of consultation that involves a lot of key informant interviews and also to facilitate a board of directors meeting for an international not-for-profit. It's a pretty good sized not-for-profit. The funders know that there are some challenges with this organization, hence the need for stakeholder interviews. After about 3 interviews, I discovered that our plan is going to be necessarily entirely different. Because what I find out in my interviews is that the board of directors is defrauding the organization, that they are misrepresenting information on the Internal Revenue Services reporting forms, that in fact we have a very serious federal legal problem. I go back to my funder, who's a third-party funder, who has asked me to do this work, and we begin to talk it through. All of a sudden our design gets thrown out the door, and we adapt a different approach, which is that in a facilitated session with the board of directors, this information is going to be divulged to them. The design is for me to get thrown out of the session. That is my job, because these folks need to have a bracing dose of reality given to them. I'm real on with this plan. I realize it needs to be done. I'm up for it. We go in, and it is so successful that they send me packing without my boxed lunch. What I had not anticipated was how it would feel. I had my intellectual head around what needed to be done. I did not understand emotionally and psychologically what this would mean to me. When I found out 48 hours later that some of the board of directors had sent a letter to the third-party funder accusing me of unprofessional conduct, those feelings only intensified. I spent a great deal of time with my mentor sorting that out. Now, the good news is that the result of that activity was that that board of directors was called onto the carpet. The problems did get solved through threats of multiple funders. So in fact, it was a highly successful venture. It achieved what was intended. And yet, quite honestly, what I was left with was a great sense of feeling about this experience. I'm not accustomed to having letters such as that written about me. As I did the work around that with my mentor, trying to sort it out, I tripped into the work we're going to be doing here today. What I would say I learned is that I may have had intellectual understanding of what lay before me in terms of what needed to be doing, but I did not have emotional understanding. In fact, what I found out, I'm a social worker by training, and in social work school, what they teach you is you should always know your baggage when you walk in, because otherwise your baggage will get in the way of the client's outcomes. My baggage was looming large in front of me. And my baggage was pretty simple. I came in with a very high expectation of the standards of my performance. When you get a letter that says you have behaved unprofessionally, it is completely at odds with what you think you're doing. And to this day, I share this story because to this day, as I tell that story, I can easily remember how it feels. I was in fact, what I'd like to do, tell the truth, I still want to send them a letter that says, you don't understand. I did a beautiful job with you all. We solved the problem that needed to be solved. We took care of your fraud problems. Granted, I got thrown out, but we got it done. But I will never have that opportunity. So I'm forced to deal with this consequence. And it has forced me into this body of work called the Level 5 Facilitator. So before we jump into that, what I'd actually like to do is to spend a little time with introductions. And the way I'd like to do this is I'd like you to think, I have a friend who does communications work, and he says that the perfect explanation is communicated in exactly 9 words. I don't know if it's true or not, but I like it. So what I'd like you to think about for a moment is, in 9 words, or as close you can get there to, what do you want out of today? There's a reason you're here. Something about what you read in there appeals to you or piques your curiosity. I'd like you to come up with your crack at 9 words about what you'd like out of today. And I'm going to be quiet while you do that. I'll give you a few minutes to think about it. And if you don't get exactly 9 words, it's really okay. I don't know that the science even supports 9 words, but there you go. Now what I'd like you to do is we're going to do the old milling around introduction exercise, because you all can probably cover a lot more ground talking to each other. I'd like you to get up, talk to everybody in the room, share your 9 words. You can share your name and affiliation as well. And we're going to mill around for 5 or 10 minutes while you talk to everybody about your intentions for this session and hear theirs. And then we're going to go into it. So you can stand up and mill around.
Hello, social worker.
Oh, you're a social worker too. Good, good.
You have your MSW?
I'm sorry?
You have your MSW?
I do, yes. University of Albany. And you?
University of Pittsburgh.
Aha.
Did you actually start out in real social work?
I did not.
Oh,
I
you
started out
didn't?
in a whole different career and ended up in social work and never practiced because I ended up doing all this kind of work.
Well, I started out in real social work for about 20 years.
Oh, you got the real background. Yeah, I'm an impersonator.
Oh,
But thank you for letting me know.
You know what? I think I don't know about you, but the values and what I learned sticks with me to this day.
Oh, and in facilitative roles, those
Absolutely.
values are so useful.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're going to talk about this in a second. You'll recognize that as a translation of Carl Rogers.
Yeah.
It really struck a chord. So
Good.
it was very
Good.
interesting. I think that I've experienced that a couple of times, not as in an as extreme a situation, but certainly had that feeling of you don't understand. Just because you didn't like it doesn't mean it wasn't successful.
That's right. But when they're like looking at you, like, oh, yeah. Good. Well, I'm delighted you're here.
Thank you. I am as well.
If you didn't get a chance to chat with somebody, find them at the break and continue that dialogue. So I'm coming in here today with one ground rule. It's actually characterized up here on this first slide. Your desires, your values, your path, and your life are wholly acceptable to me. I neither approve nor disapprove, but am placed in a position of neutrality, parenthetically, with regard to you. Through this, it becomes possible to approach you and engage you with consideration, openness, and candor. And we were just chatting a moment ago. That's a translation of the work of Carl Rogers, who was central to Rogerian theory, central to social work, central to really almost all counseling therapeutic frameworks. Because what Rogers understood, and you, I'm sure, have at least glimpsed, is that when we hold other people in complete value, all kinds of things that can happen that won't happen otherwise. In fact, I was speaking in a church of all places about this one particular weekend, and a 5th grade teacher came up with tears in her eyes. She said, "Oh, Ron, when I'm not holding those kids in positive regard, you can see it on their faces and their performance suffers." And I thought, isn't that the truth? So what I'd like to do is say just a little bit about what we're here to do. Very simply, very quickly. I'd like you to understand the attributes of this level 5 leader. I'd like for you to assess your personal and professional development. We've already begun that with some of the work on the wall, which we're going to come back to. Create a personal development action plan, because I would fail you, in my opinion, if you didn't walk out of here with something to apply. Concepts are wonderful. We got to put it on the ground somehow. And I'd like, by the time we're done, to aspire you to execute that plan, which would mean to elevate your game as a facilitator. That's really what it's all about in terms of where we're going here. Now let's talk about this level 5 facilitator. Who here has ever seen a world-class musical performer on a stage? Yeah, okay, you'll get this. There was a time when that world-class performer, I saw George Winston one time play. He played for almost 2 hours nonstop, didn't say a word to the audience, he just played. It was extraordinary to watch, and I got it. This was a guy who, when he was real little, had to learn the scales just like everybody else, right? because unless you're a prodigy like Mozart, who probably still had to start with scales. So he started with those skills, and he worked with those skills, and he developed those skills, and there came a moment where he transcended those skills. Skills weren't enough. You don't become that good. You don't become a Van Cliburn. You don't become an Isaac Perlman by just having the skills. There's something that occurs. And what I have been interested in, and some of you have told me in our brief conversations, you're interested in this as well, is there's something else above that. There's a stepping up of the game. There's an elevation beyond skills. Skills are essential but not sufficient. Experience is necessary but not sufficient. There's something else that takes place that distinguishes, and Brenda and I were chatting because she knows the Level 5 framework. And she said, I've only known 2 Level 5 leaders. That's a framework we'll talk about in a moment. And my response was, and I've known about that many Level 5 facilitators, and I don't include myself in that pool. It's a very aspirational practice.